Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Biology of Absurd Arena, where we cover the Neocene and all of its interesting flora and fauna. Today's episode, we are going to be focusing on the clade Draconomorpha, which are the dragons. If you didn't see the last episode, it was an episode covering convergent evolution. So, Neocene, basically an alternate timeline where dinosaurs decide, non-avian dinosaurs specifically, decided to go, you know what, screw it. We ain't going extinct. But mammals decided to evolve anyways. Today, that wouldn't have actually happened because, well, mammals couldn't evolve to the ones that they were today. They are today. Back then, during like the Mesozoic, because of the fact that dinosaurs have already, non-avian ones specifically, evolved, already filled certain niches, like like theropods filling the apex predator niche, and herbivores like ceratopsians filling like the niche of things like elephants. In this alternative timeline, it's kind of wacky. So there's some stuff that I'm not even able to explain, that I just say, you know what, Neocene logic. So in the Neocene, the group Archosauria is split into two groups. The Archaeoarchosauria, which includes uh, pterosaurs, crocodilians, uh, and dinosaurs, including birds and other avimetatarsalians. The group Neoarchosauria contains three groups. Even though it says she here, I've been playing around with this project a lot, but the third group is kind of still debated, and that being the Saurolepidoptera, which are the sea butterflies. The two main Neoarchosaurian groups are the Pseudotheropoda and the Ceratodontosaurida, which we covered in the last Biology of Absurd Arena episode on my main channel, featuring swimming axolotl. Today we're going to be focusing on the pseudotheropods. Now, the pseudotheropoda is split into, I guess you could say, two main groups: the Cerodraconomorpha, which includes the true pseudotheropods, the false dragons, and the snallygasters, which we covered the American snallygaster in the first episode of the Biology of Absurd Arena. And then we have the second group, the Draconomorpha, or the dragons. Now you could also say true dragons, however, that's you'll see in a bit why I don't really use that for this. So and then this split into three families. On the order, I think Draconiformia, Draconiforms. Hold on, I gotta. The Draconomorpha split into three, three families: the Ophistodraconidae, the snake or aquatic dragons, the Suchodraconidae, the crocodile dragons, and the Saurodraconidae, the lizard dragons. We'll get to these guys later. The first group, which we'll be getting into more detail later on, is the Ophistodraconidae, which contains 4 groups slash genera. Ophisthodraco, which translates to snake dragon, which this group includes the worms. Thalassodraco, which means sea dragon, which contains the sea serpents. Reparodraco, which means river dragon, is home to the lungs. And Ichthyodraco, which means, well, fish dragon, includes the mandas. And this group of dragon, these dragons are identified by being either semi-aquatic or fully aquatic, with only one member being fully terrestrial, which we'll get to later. Now there are 2 subfamilies, Ophisthodracanae, which includes the worms and the lungs, and the Thalassodracanae, which includes the sea serpents and the mandas. Though that might be but those subfamilies are up for debate. The next group is the Suchodraconidae, which has 3 extant genera and 2 extinct genera. I haven't made sticks for the extinct genera on here, so we're only focusing on the extant ones. These genera are Suchodraco, meaning crocodile dragon, which are the drakes. Ornithodraco, which translates to the bird dragon, which are the griffins. And Thylacodraco, which I think means pouched dragon, which includes the tassel worms. This group is an Incertacetus, which translates to uncertain name, I think, or uncertain placement. Meaning these guys are basically a taxonomic nightmare. So I won't be covering these guys. But this is the group of mammalian dragons, with the Tokolosh being the only extant member of this genus. And the 2 extinct ones are the hippogriffs, I think Eodraconidae, or Proto-Ornithodraco, and the Kieran's Equidraco. And the last family is the Saurodraconidae, which also includes the proto-wyverns, genus Saurodraco, meaning lizard dragon, but I don't have any lizard dragons, so yeah. The members of this group are the wyverns, genus Archaeodraco, translating to ancient dragon, because, well, they're kind of a basal group. Genus Pterodraco, which means winged dragon. These are the true dragons, or the winged dragons. Technically all dragons are like true dragons, but it's hard to explain, but these are true dragons. And Heliodraco, translating to sun dragon, which are the amphitheres. Now we get on to the members of each group. So currently in Absurdorina there are 3 species, but this is just in the Absurdorina series. In the actual Neocene there are a bunch of species. The largest of the worms is the African banded worm, Ophisthodraco bicolor. Worms are identified by their long snake-like bodies with short legs and a long snout with with razor sharp teeth. The American worm is one of the more common species, often found in lakes, ponds, rivers, and rarely in estuaries, but you'll most likely find them in ponds or lakes where they'll hunt fish, freshwater mollusks, small aerials, sometimes other worms, and pretty much whatever they can fit down their throat. The build of a worm can vary, but most likely they'll have a long serpentine body with a fluked tail, a dorsal fin, and a large crest. And they'll most likely have webbed feet, though I don't really see any webbed feet here. The smallest member is the knucker. Worms are basically the smallest group of dragons. Although the largest species can max out at around the size of an African rock python, with some reported to be even bigger than that. The knucker is basically a minnow-sized worm found in Europe. Which doesn't really look like that much of a worm. They're more, I guess you could say, robust. And then the only terrestrial member of the Ophistodraconidae family, in fact, the lindworm from Asia, is identified by not having a tail fluke and no webbed feet, and slightly longer legs. These ones hunt on land for small vertebrates and soft-bodied invertebrates, and you'll most likely find these guys in leaf litter and under logs. Worms are venomous, meaning, yeah, you kind of don't want to get bitten by these guys because it ain't gonna feel too good. Though you're not gonna die if one bites you, it's just not gonna feel too good. Most worms are either amphibious or semi-aquatic, with some purely aquatic species, and most of them are freshwater, with the saltwater worm kind of being an exception. And our other groups of ophistodraconids, the Chinese long, or Paradraco jiao This group of dragons used to be considered a group of worms, but since they are a bit different, they are considered two different genera. Lungs are also known as longs. Uh, they're also called longs, giant worms, or river serpents, and resemble nothosaurs. Lungs are kind of more built for taking down slightly larger prey animals, and are mostly found in rivers, given the name a river dragon. These guys are also venomous, but their venom is kind of mild. They mainly hunt fish, mammals, the reptiles, and mollusks. They can go on land, but they're not really good at moving on land, unlike their cousins, the worm. The oceanic manda, Ichthyodraco oceaneus, is basically kind of like a shark. These dragons are primarily found in the open ocean and around coral reefs, where, well, they act as a shark in that area. These guys are non-venomous, given that they're larger and more built for taking down things like seals and small dolphins. And these guys are purely aquatic and saltwater animals. So this is the only manta species that is saltwater. And also the back legs of a manta are vestigial, kind of like the back legs of cetaceans and sirenians like manatees. Which means, yeah, these guys have back legs, but they're just not there. And the largest group of dragons in the apex predator of the Neocean oceans are the sea serpents. The Thalassodraco gigantus, or the great titanfin. Sea serpents are also non-venomous and are cetacean-sized. You won't really need venom when you're built to take down large prey. These guys have no natural predators. They'd prey on plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, pliosaurs, smaller sea serpents, giant squids, smaller cetaceans, seals, sharks, and just pretty much anything that they share their habitat with. However, you go deeper into the ocean where there's no sea serpents, you'll find a monster. That's all I'm gonna say. Despite being so large, these kind of things are actually really docile. Don't really consider humans a threat, as you're not worth the calories. However, attacks will occur, but only if you basically basically if you get attacked by one, it's basically 100% your fault. Oh, yeah, and these are the largest of the dragons, by the way. Moving on from that family, we have the Suchodraconidae, genus Suchodraco, the drakes, which kind of fill the niche of both crocodiles, crocodile, crocodiliforms like the Cebicids and, Caprasuchus. These guys are built for pursuit predation. The wolf-faced drake is a species of drake native to Australia, alongside the Australian slash outback drake, where they prey on marsupials and smaller dragons. These ones often will cause human fatalities, as they're extremely territorial, and their bite isn't as strong as the other members due to the shape of their skull being similar to wolves, hence the name of wolf-faced drake. And these guys do have to compete with another dragon species, which we'll get to later. And they're mainly found in the western part, though they can be found in the northern part of Australia. Next up, we have the Canadian drake, found in, you guessed it, Canada, where they're often found in areas in Canada that aren't really cold, where they'll hunt basically whatever they can take down. The Canadian drake is mainly found on lower bits of ground where they can spot things like ground squirrels and badgers, or they can run them down and basically deliver that nasty bite. The European bipedal drake is well found in Europe. Basically, they convergently evolved longer legs, similar to theropods and wyverns, and are more better suited for pursuit predation, where they'll often hunt in pairs, usually a male and a female, where they basically share their kill. These guys are also very territorial, and yeah, you basically don't want to make one angry because they will run you down, and getting torn apart by those teeth will hurt a lot. These guys, I think, were also covered on the second episode of the biology of absurd arena. But yeah, and so this is the only extant bipedal drake. There are two bipedal drakes: European bipedal drake and the spring-heeled jack, which is extinct, but scientists are trying to bring it back. Which, if you've seen Jurassic Park, might not be a good idea. But spring-heeled jack drakes are small. Most of these drakes would probably get around to the size of big cats. Anyway, so next up is the African gorgon, which is interesting because it has a mutualistic relationship with the African keeled snake and other groups of snakes, and even spiders, which will actively use the spikes, sail, and crest, and basically they'll hold on, and basically the gorgon basically provides protection from predators such as the Kongomodo and early Byrons, which we'll cover later in the video. Gorgon drakes were thought to have been venomous, but it turns out they aren't. And lastly, we have the Asian giant drake, the largest of the drakes, which is large enough to tackle the Neocene's extant species of calicotheres, and sometimes will tussle with the tesseract from occasion. Unlike most drakes, which are pursuit predators, Asian giant drakes will ambush and deliver a bone-crushing bite to the neck. People are able to keep drakes as pets, but it's not really recommended because basically just think of it as keeping big cats. Oh boy. Next up, we have the griffins, or Dollar Tree terror birds. This group of dragons resemble the extinct forest rocket terror birds, which in the Neocene there are actual forest rockets. But these ones are mainly the ones filling that role. They are identified by their looking like a terror bird, and the basilisk uh, has vestigial arms It has arms, but they've become vestigial. So yeah, the phoenix is the largest species of griffin found in Asia, where they hunt things like horses and other ungulates. Unlike terror birds, griffins are able to swing that beak fast and hard enough to basically shatter the spinal cord of their prey items. And their skulls are able to have a lot of cushioning to basically protect them from the force of delivering such a painful blow. The thunderbird is primarily herbivorous and, and rarely hunts other animals. They kind of act as the moas, and are the second largest dragon or second largest griffin. One of the one of the smallest griffins is the chainsaw bill from South America, where they get their name for producing a call that basically sounds like a chainsaw. And that sound is used to attract mates. And given their size, they primarily hunt smaller animals and will sometimes even hunt the arboreal barnacles and will even eat eggs. The basilisk and cockatrice are some of the more well known members of the griffin family, where the cockatrice has a beak kind of similar to that of a theropod, where it's a bit more longer and filled with teeth. And basilisks and cockatrices are able to mate with each other, and hybrids have been produced, like natural hybrids. Basilisks and cockatrices do have to compete with the lamia, which is a bipedal um, monitor lizard, though, but the lamias are more bulky ambush predators, while the basilisk and cockatrice are um, sleeker, more slender pursuit predators. And then there's the African griffin, which appeared in the episode where it fought the Gorgon. African griffins are just basically just your stereotypical griffin. There's the American griffin, which is the most common species and will often compete with the American black dragon and juvenile snallygasters. African American griffins are more successful than the two other creatures I just mentioned that aren't the griffins, as they're as these guys are quick and efficient and often attack fast enough to basically the prey item doesn't know what hit them. The Australian Strix is another small species of griffin. However, they're a bit different as they basically are kind of like secretary birds. Instead of running at prey and slamming that beak into their spine or skull, they primarily hunt smaller animals where they'll basically stomp on them and try shattering the prey item's bones. And they're pursuit predators as well. Unlike the other griffins, the arboreal dragon from Europe has long arms. While most griffins have traded in their arms for their powerful beaks and long legs, they can still use these hands. The arboreal dragon has longer arms and a longer tail, as more as well as more zygodactyl feet, where they basically climb trees and act as arboreal predators, which can actually change their color thanks to chromatophores in their skin. It was widely debated at first what arboreal dragons were, but scientists basically came to the conclusion that they were griffins due to their skull appearance. Oh boy, our next group of dragons, the wyverns. Now this is just scratching the surface. Of course, I spoke about the black dragon, Archaeodraco kurame, and the white dragon, Archaeodraco leucoa. This translates to black-eyed ancient dragon. This translates to literally to white ancient dragon. I covered more in the first episode, so I'm not just gonna sound like a broken record. However, I didn't speak about these ones. The dark mantle is a species of aquatic wyvern found in deep parts of the Neocene's oceans, but they will sometimes go out in shallower waters during the night, where they hunt aquatic animals, and wyverns are venomous. Most wyverns have either neurotoxic or either the venom targets the nervous system or the muscular system. Some wyverns, however, not all wyverns are built equal. The dark mantle's venom is surprisingly mild, as it doesn't really attack humans unless it mistakes you for like a seal or something. Their their venom basically sort of acts as an anticoagulant. In fact, you won't die from the venom. The only way you'll die is if you're like, well, you can die, but not like from the venom itself. Either you get killed by a shark that you attracted, or you get an infection and die from that. The anticoagulant basically causes the victim to bleed to death as the dark mantle basically swims around. Though this kind of is a bad idea, so they do have to be careful, as that could attract sharks. As yes, even though most extant animals have went extinct during the Neocene, sharks are still around. You'll mostly find these guys at deeper parts of the ocean, where they're a lot more dangerous, as you basically can't see them very well. Their eyes do glow in the dark, though, but most likely they'll see you before you see them. Next up is the African red dragon, which is the smallest species of wyvern, and these ones hunt in packs. Similar to most wyverns, where they'll basically leap onto their prey's back, bite down, and hold on as they inject as much venom as they can. Red dragons will basically do the same, but in groups, meaning the amount of venom they produce is going to be a lot more because of the amount of dragons attacking. On their own, they mainly hunt small animals, and sometimes will even eat plant matter, but in groups they'll target medium-sized ungulates, and will rarely attack gorgons, where they don't kill the gorgon, but they mainly members distract it while some grab in and take one of the snakes on it. These guys' venom is well just neurotoxic. They're less likely to bite a human than most other species of wyverns, you're as although they're small, you're not going to be worth the effort. Do note that these aren't the actual sizes. The reason I say that is because the Oriental dragon, which is the largest terrestrial dragon, it used to be the European dragon. However, specimens of the Oriental dragon basically kind of outweigh the European dragon. Oriental dragons are basically apex predators of the island Oriental, where there's no theropods on the island that they have to compete with. Basically, the Oriental dragon will eat any animal that is in its environment, including sauropods. Yes, these hunt sauropods. And one of their main weapons is their necrotoxic venom, which is also corrosive. And if this gets on a human, it'll cause third-degree burns. What an Oriental dragon will do is it'll bite like a sauropod or something, and it'll get in a good bite, and then it'll walk away and basically kind of circle the sauropod. Sometimes it'll keep biting, but most of the times it just gets one good bite. It basically gets the heck out of there and waits for the sauropod to either be too weak to fight back or to die. And basically, once the prey item is down, the Oriental dragon will basically eat them, even while they're still alive and too weak to fight back. And Oriental dragons um, don't have small filaments, but mainly attract the attention of mates by two male Oriental dragons fighting each other. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, wyverns, unlike most venomous dragons, where they have to bite, they can wyverns can spit their venom, which is bad news if that gets in your eyes. Very bad news. You thought we were done with wyverns? Nope, we still got more members to go. The ivory dragon is the second smallest wyvern species found on the island of Madagascar, Oriental, and Tasmania, Hawaii, and Canada. And they're basically the red dragons of those areas, except without the pack hunting. They're relatively small and not really aggressive. They just kind of exist. Next up is Archaeodracocorome asiaticus, or the Asiatic black dragon, which is a subspecies of American black dragon found in Asia, where these guys are a bit larger and will hunt and we'll hunt ungulates, and we'll have to compete, and they do compete with the tyrants, Siberian tigers. Yes, those things stayed around surprisingly. Tetherax and Asian giant drake, and will sometimes fall prey to the giant constrictor Tyrannoserpenthes, literally the tyrant serpent. And these guys are more aggressive than the American variation. Other than that, they're basically just the American black dragon, but from Asia. The second largest species of wyvern is the emerald dragon, also from the island of Oriental, but also found in some other parts in Europe. Where basically these guys are more around the size of Allosaurus. We probably would have hunted similar animals. Their venom is it basically targets the eyes. When the bite is transmitted, the venom will basically kind of travel up to where your eye sockets are. Basically, it'll cause blindness. But bites from the emerald dragon are rare. They do happen though. I mean, all wyverns have these toe claws. I guess with the exception of the dark mantle, because where the hell are the toe claws in this guy? But they'll most likely have toe claws and resemble dromaeosaurs. Next up, we have the Australian Kolajack, which I discussed in the second Biology of Absurdorina episode. Basically, these guys have venom that basically it dehydrates you. Solomila is another Australian wyvern. I think I covered that in the second episode of the Biology of Absurdorina. Basically, they're smaller Kolajaks, but without the venom that targets the vascular system. And the Oriental dragon isn't the only apex predator wyvern. If you remember Cryovenator, which appeared in episode 10 of Absurdorina Continued, that is the apex predator of the island Isla Luna. However, they compete with our raptor, which is the third largest wyvern. The Raptor has a mix of both neurotoxic and hemotoxic venom, and they are the apex predator of one specific spot of Isla Luna. And if Cryovenator ever goes extinct, our raptor will take its spot. And these guys will hunt small sauropods. Next up are the true/winged dragons, which do have wings, but they can't fly. The wings are there for display. The European dragon is well found in Europe, and essentially is kind of the top predator of that area. What makes true dragons unique is the fact that they can breathe fire. They have a pouch in their throat and a special lining, a substance lining throughout their body, similar to how we can handle our own stomach acid. Dragons can basically breathe fire without really getting hurt. That throat pouch has flammable gas, methane, which they'll basically breathe when displaying or when as like a last resort as fire can be extremely expensive to make. It is assumed that the fire breathing glands in true dragons evolved from venom glands. It is assumed that an extinct true dragon was basal true dragons were venomous, and over time, those venom glands became glands that allowed them to produce methane that they can mix with another substance to basically cause a reaction that basically creates fire. European dragons target larger animals and are the second largest terrestrial dragon, though they used to be the largest until more specimens of oriental dragons came around. Next up is the South American Deathbringer, which sometimes thing with dragon fire is that it's not gonna cause a forest fire. Well, yes, it's fire, but how it works is that actually I'm not sure how it works. Sometimes dragons can use fire to their advantage when hunting. Sometimes during forest fires, dragons will sometimes wander about and wait for an animal to come by. A lot of actual modern birds of prey will wait around bush fires for animals fleeing and basically swoop down. Deathbringers are more known for that, though, hence the name. The African Byron is more adapted for hunting fish and aquatic animals. Given that they're kind of smaller, they're basically the storks of the dragons. Unlike most other dragons, which can breathe a stream of fire, Byrons basically create like a fireball, which they mix with their saliva, and they more or less use that as a defense. And last of the true dragons, we have the Sydney gas breather, which instead of breathing fire, breathes a smog-like substance, which it's still no unknown what that is. And those guys are found in Australia. And I just want to mention how in the Neocene, reptiles are kind of slowly becoming the dominant species. Again, like they were back in the Mesozoic era. I'm sorry if I'm not explaining these as good as I should. I apologize for that. But yeah, true dragons, again, can't fly due to either being too big or they don't have flight muscles. Actually, they don't have flight muscles at all. Why do they have wings then? No clue. But it is assumed that as juveniles they could glide. And lastly, not to be confused with the true dragons, are the amphitheres or false pterosaurs, where essentially these guys can fly. The Australian amphithere is found in Australia, of course, and is the second largest amphithere. Basically, just think of these guys as fake pterosaurs. Lesser amphithere from North America. It's kind of like a parrot. They're really intelligent and can actually mimic words like parrots. But other than that, not much else is known about them. Is there more of a recent addition? Again, I'm not going to be covering the Thylacodraco genus, as it's in Incertacetus. Basically, we don't know if they're suchodraconids or Saurodraconids, but we just know that they exist. Again, they're in Incertae Cetus, uncertain placement. And that is the end of this episode. Now, I'm not sure what I'll cover in the next one, but I'll figure something out. So yeah, if you enjoyed, like, subscribe, comment, and yeah, bye.